on the way.
Boogeyman band coming round the bend. Is Boogeyman band. Is Boogeyman band.
Greetings, my fellow Fright Fiends, and thanks so much for dropping by the Horror Zone. I hope everyone's doing well. Happy Friday the 13th to everyone. Very happy that it's Friday the 13th. The last one we had was in May of last year. This is always a very fun, important day to me. I don't know why. It always has been. Everybody's always thought I was weird. People that I know outside of the horror community, people that I would work with would always say, Ben, Friday the 13th is coming up. I'm like, heck yeah. You know, it's like it was just something that I don't know why. It brings me joy, just like the season of Halloween brings me joy. It's a time where I can celebrate my favorite horror franchise. You know, it's just a part of my childhood. Like I talked about when I talked about the Friday the 13th final chapter Steelbook. It was just something that made me feel, it was like horror movies and the horror genre, especially Friday the 13th, because it was really the first horror movie series that I got into at a very young age. You know, and I really got into Jason with Friday the 13th Part 3 and then Final Chapter and New Beginning, and then I would go back and watch the original and Part 2. So yeah, I mean, it's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I mean, some of these going on 40 years. I mean, we just hit the 40th anniversary of Part 3. I still remember watching it at my grandparents' mobile home in Manteca in the summer of like 1983, I believe. And I just remember it terrifying me. Yeah, it's like it terrified me, and then I welcomed it, and I was just fascinated by Jason and the Mask. And, you know, Friday the 13th is one of the reasons this channel exists. And I thought for today I would do something different. Now, if people have been watching my channel, they know that last week I put it out to my fellow fiends, send me some ideas. And a lot of the ideas I've gotten, I had already done. So people said, hey, you know, rank your top kills. So back in 2018, I did my top 13 Friday the 13th kills. I'll link that down below so people can check that out. Another one was like, hey, talk about, you know, what it was like growing up with these films and seeing them and the anticipation of seeing them. I did that too. I did growing up at Camp Crystal Lake, which was a video I did for Friday the 13th in December of 2019. So I'll put a link down below to that. But then my friend Frankie Elvis Barbary, I hope I'm saying that right, he said, why don't you do something similar to what I'm doing with the Salem's Lot series that I'm doing? Quiet little tribute to Salem's Lot, where I'm talking about each of the actors. No, I didn't have the time to do all of the actors because there's so many actors, and plus it's not just one movie, it's technically, 12 movies. That would take way too long. So what I thought I would do is, and I've showed this many times now, this is the very first printing of Crystal Lake Memories, Peter Brack's amazing coffee table book that came out. This came out in 2005. I pre-ordered this. I followed, through like the Friday the 13th website and everything. This is before Instagram and everything, but followed it, in terms of its production. I had it shipped to my grandmother's house because at the time my wife and I lived in an apartment and I didn't want someone to steal it. But this is what I take to every convention when I meet a Friday the 13th alumni. It has quite a few signatures in it. So just to showcase a few. And while I have talked about, meeting these people, over the years, I started getting this book signed in 2009. And I just thought it'd be kind of fun to go through each of the signatures and talk about my recollections of meeting each of the actors that signed this book. Now, there's two holdouts. There's two that I met, Friday the 13th alumni, but they are not in this book. I didn't have this book with me. One of them was for a very stupid reason. The other one, I didn't want to look like a stupid fanboy. For the first one I want to talk about is Derek Mears. Now, Derek Mears played Jason in the Friday the 13th reboot from 2009. Did a fantastic job. I knew he had been in The Hills Have Eyes 2. And he was promoting Predators because it was 2010 and it was the end of September 25th. And it was at the Sacramento Sci-Fi Horror Con. Now, this would actually be at the Scottish Rite Center, and this would eventually be the location for Sinister Creature Con. I had him sign a variety of things. I had him sign an 8x10. I had him sign my PX exclusive Mezco baghead or sackhead Jason from the film. And NECA had just released they had just released the exclusive they had done an 18-inch figure of the look from the reboot, and they had just put out the 8-inch figure. And I had just bought it like the day before. And I was talking to him about it, and he said he hadn't gotten one of those figures. And I felt bad because I felt like if I had known that, which how would I have known that, I would have given him one. But I didn't bring that to be signed. I wanted the PX exclusive figure to be signed and brought it there, and he signed it. and he was really cool, just a really down-to-earth guy. And I remember taking a picture with him, and my wife took the picture, and he just kept saying, "Oh, we'll just keep taking as many pictures until we get it right." I remember him saying that, and he was just a really cool guy. And it was a tremendous honor, and I hope to meet him again. If I do meet him again, I'm having him sign this book. The other Friday the 13th alumni that I met, and I didn't have her sign this book, was Deborah Voorhees, of course, who played Tina, my biggest crush from the Friday the 13th franchise. I've talked about her many times. She just wrote and directed 13 Fanboy, and she and I actually met up for coffee in San Francisco. If people are interested to hear the whole story, I'll put a link down below where people can check that out. But it was kind of something a little spontaneous. It was actually the same day I was going to take my mom out for her birthday. And I remember I caught BART, which is like the subway here in the Bay Area, to San Francisco. And I met her by this gym. It was like a gym really close to Union Square. And I remember we were texting back and forth through Facebook, Messenger. And she and I walked around the city for like a good 30 minutes, just chatting. We were walking up and down like by where Macy's was and Nordstrom's and everything. And then we ended up going to this Pete's Coffee, and she bought me something to drink, and we just sat there and talked for like an hour. And it was a really great experience. And she took a picture with me, and it was awesome. And again, one of the biggest thrills I've ever had, just having the chance to have the opportunity for her to listen to me, and the time that we had together really means a lot to me. And we talked about all kinds of things, from politics to movies to just the industry. And she's an amazing person, and that was a heck of a experience. And her husband, I remember, was sightseeing. He was around taking pictures of just the city. And we would see him every once in a while when we were walking around. And then eventually I would walk her to the Palace Hotel, and her husband would go inside. And then I hopped on BART and went back to, the East Bay, and drove to pick up my mom to take her out for lunch. So it was a crazy, crazy day. That was on January 14th of 2018. So I just want to make sure I talked about those before I get into the book, because I'm going to go through each of these autographs and just talk about what it was like meeting some of these people. Sometimes in some of my videos where I don't like to badmouth people, and that's not what this is, but I'm just going to be honest. So the first one is Steve Dash, may he rest in peace. I got to meet him several months before he passed away. I met him June 17th of 2018. He was at Sinister Creature Con. I had always felt bad about the fact that Warrington Gillette had taken a lot of the credit playing Jason Voorhees throughout Friday the 13th Part 2, when Steve Dash did a majority of the work. He wrote to Ben and Jackie, most of the time I'll just say, "Can you make it out to my wife and I?" And he said, "To Ben and Jackie, stay out of the woods, Steve Dash, the real Jason, Part 2. And I just remember talking to him about, how much the movie meant to me. And the thing I remember the most is when I said I was sorry for what had happened, that he had not gotten the credit for so many years. And Jason, I remember he pulled out the money bag that he had, and he opened it up and showed it to me. And he says, "Brother, I'm doing just fine." And it was a great moment, and it's one that I'll always remember and treasure. Just a tremendous honor. One of the best people I met in the franchise. One of my favorites. The next one was at the Twisted Terracon. Now, this took place on the 30th of March in 2014. This was also in Sacramento. This was one that was supposed to have a follow-up show that never happened. There were some great people at this one. So this is the same place I got to meet Tyler Mane, who played Michael Myers. I get to meet Nick Principe, who played Chrome Skull. Josh Stewart, who played Arkin in The Collector and the Collection. And Erin Gray, who a lot of people will most likely know from Buck Rogers. Well, she and Gil Gerard, who played Buck Rogers, were both at this, because it was kind of, again, it was that mix of horror and sci-fi. But she was a Friday the 13th alumni. She played Jason's sister, Diana, in Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. So I remember my wife and I got in line, and we'd already met some of the other people. I think Josh Stewart, if I remember correctly, Josh Stewart was the last person I met. So I had already met Tyler Mane. I'd already met Nick Principe. Nick Principe was the first person I met. And I just remember we were standing in line to meet her, and they always have somebody there that, they talk to you, say, "Okay, what do you haven't signed? Or did you want an autograph print?" Or, whatever. And we were, I showed her the book that I was going to have signed, because it was a woman. And I said, I said, "I'm having this book signed." And I remember Miss Gray was already talking to somebody. And the woman said, oh, she loves to spend time with her fans. And we were patient. We were just waiting there, you know, and when she finished with, I believe it was a man that she was talking to, and when he walked away, I remember Miss Gray turning around and looking at my wife and I. Both of us had, like, you know, we looked like horror fans. And I just remember her face changing, like her face, her expression changing. My wife noticed it too. And she really wasn't very nice to us. And in fact, out of everybody I've met from the Friday the 13th cast, she is the one person I didn't want to take a picture with, and I didn't. She did say, I mean, what she said was nice, and she has beautiful writing. It says, to Ben and Jackie, don't take life too seriously. You're not going to get out alive. Love, Aaron Gray, which I think is kind of fun. And then I got an extra print from her. I didn't have her sign it, but I took that and we kind of left and said, thanked her and everything. But yeah, she was probably the most uncomfortable celebrity I've ever met. One of the most uncomfortable ones. It just, yeah, the vibe was wrong. And I said, you know, yeah, I didn't want to get too close to her. I could tell that she was not impressed with us. And, it was kind of unfortunate because I always had a crush on Aaron Gray growing up. But yeah, she didn't say anything mean or anything. It was just, you know, you can sometimes read people's body language. And what I read, it was like she didn't want to talk to us for very long. So we got out of there quick. The next one I want to talk about is Bill Butler. Now, Bill Butler, of course, he played Michael in Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. Bill Butler was also in the remake of Night of the Living Dead that Tom Savini did. And he was also in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. He was very nice. My friend Jamie, who I've known at the convention scene for a long time, she's an awesome person. She was actually the one working the table with him, so she was actually the one handling the money and everything. And she built me up. She said, "Oh, I know this guy," and all this stuff. And she was really cool. And Bill was super nice. I don't, you know, it's like I don't follow him very regularly, but in terms of other things that he's done, I just primarily know him for those 3 films that I mentioned. But he was super nice. And I just remember telling him, you know, just how much that scene, you know, was so cool. And the whole thing about him calling Kane Stinky Voorhees because of what the smell was on the costume that Kane had to wear. But he just wrote Stay Out of the Woods, William Butler, Michael, Part 7. And the next one I want to talk about is Tom Matthews. Now, Tom Matthews played Tommy Jarvis in Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, my favorite Friday the 13th film. He was there at the same time. He was there the same weekend that Steve Dash was there. And he was really cool. And this was right after Never Hike Alone had come out, and of course he reprised his role as Tommy in that, and I was talking to him about it. But yeah, he wrote Ben and Jackie, Jason Belongs in Hell, and I'm Gonna See He Gets There, Tom Matthews, Tommy Jarvis, Part 6. So yeah, that was a complete thrill, and he was a really nice guy. Now the next one is just Jason Lives, and there's another story about this one that I'll talk about when I get to Kane. So CJ was the first Jason actor I met. I met him on February 28th of 2009 at WonderCon, and this was just a couple weeks after the Friday the 13th reboot had come out. But I remember he was all by himself. I remember he had a green army shirt on when I met him, and this was the same con where Warrington Gillette and Kane were supposed to be there, and they weren't there. But I just remember going up to him, and we talked to him for probably 20 minutes because there was no one else there to talk to him. This was sort of, you know, one of the first cons I went to meet like a big horror celebrity. Previously, I'd met a couple people at cons, but this was the one I went to where I met, you know, somebody that just from my childhood was an icon to me and still is. And I would meet him again, actually 3 years later, a little over 3 years later at the Miss Misery Horror Con in September 28th of 2012. But at this point, you know, I hadn't met anyone. This book had no signatures, and I got an 8x10 from him, and I had him sign this book. And yeah, he just put Jason Lives, CJ Graham, Jason 6, and was totally cool. We talked about the reboot. We talked about just, you know, how much Jason Lives meant to me, and just, you know, I shared with him, you know, just, you know, how much that I looked up to him in that role and how I wanted him to continue playing the role. And he talked to me about his son going to see like the new Jason movie, the one that just had come out with Derek Mears that Marcus Nispel had done. And he wanted to take pictures with my wife and I. I think he was flirting with my wife, but I said, that's fine. It's Jason. You go flirt with Jason. So we had fun. We had a lot of fun. And he was a super sweet guy, and still probably my favorite favorite of the Friday the 13th alumni that I met. He just is an awesome, awesome guy. The next one I want to talk about is Tom Fridley, who played Court in Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Now, I met him at the Miss Misery Horror Con, and that was on the 28th of September in 2012. He was really cool. Tom Fridley was really cool. It's because I had seen him in other things like Karate Kid, and he kept talking to me about this other movie, and I had seen the movie, but I had only seen it once. It was called Summer Camp Nightmare. And he was in it, and this soap opera actress who actually married Scott Reeves, who played Sean Robertson in Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. He dated her when she was Melissa Brennan, and there was a picture that he had at his table of them from that movie, and he kept trying to push that, going, hey, this is rare, you know, like a lot of people don't talk about this movie and everything. And I ended up getting another autograph from him, like an autograph print of the scene where Jason's approaching him as he's driving the van. Him and Nikki are trying to get away from where they were parked. But I also had him sign my book, and he was really cool. And in fact, Amy Steele took the picture of the three of me, my wife, and him. And he just said, to Ben and Jackie, so nice to meet you both. It says Court, and then it says Tom Fridley. Next to that is the amazing Amy Steele, who played Ginny, my favorite final girl from the franchise. And Amy Steele was just a vision to be around and joy to be around. And she and I started talking about the April Fool's remake that had just come out. And she asked me, she said, have you seen the remake? I said, no, and I don't plan to. And she says, yeah, I haven't heard it's very good. But she took pictures with me. She took a picture with my wife and I. And I remember I was wearing a Part 5 shirt that day. And I kept telling her, I said, I should have wore that shirt that I ended up wearing when I met Steve Dash, which has Jenny on it. And I remember CJ saying, you always wear the shirt, like you should have wore that shirt with her. Something to that effect is like, you should have wore that shirt with her on it. Like, and it was just sort of funny. He was ribbing me a little bit, but he was awesome. And she just said, to Ben and Jackie, my best fans in Sacramento, Amy Steele, Ginny Part 2. Just so cool. And she looked so much like she did in the film. You know, this was in 2012, so this was like 31 years after she had played the part, and she looked amazing, and she was completely sweet and personable. And she actually ended up, you know, we talked to her again. Like I said, she took the picture of us with Tom Fridley, and that was after we had already gone to meet another alumni that I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, she was completely sweet, and I would love to meet her again. Now, from here, I'm going to go to Kane Hodder, who I met on February 8th of 2014 at Kirk Von Hammett's Fear Fest of Evil, which I will still say is hands down the most surreal and cool convention I've ever been to. It was at the Regency Ballroom in San Francisco, and it was a really rainy day. San Francisco, like the Bay Area, was in a huge drought at the time, and I knew I had to go to this convention. And my wife and I didn't have a lot of money at the time, so my wife said, why don't you just go and have fun? And it's funny, I ended up running into one of my coworkers' husbands. His name was Christopher, and I ran into him there, but I went by myself. And this location was kind of far from where BART or the subway in the city is, so I had to catch a bus from the BART station on a rainy fucking day to this place. And it was amazing. They had people, like, they had bands that were going to play, they had tattoo artists, they had, like, I believe it was 4 stories. This entire building was used up for this, and like all of the autograph areas were up, like, on the top floor. And they also had Kirk Von Hammett from Metallica is like a huge horror fan, and he has a massive collection, so his collection was on display. Saw him walking around a couple times. But like Greg Nicotero was there, Tom Savini was there, PJ Souls was there, Heather Langenkamp, who I met, was there. It was insane, and they had like some amazing vendors and artists that were all on the very bottom floor. It was so much fun, but I had a limited budget, and the big thing for me was to meet Kane Hodder, who had played Jason. He was the only actor, still the only actor to have played the character more than once. He played him 4 times, from Part 7, 8, 9, and of course Jason X. I remember I like walked right up to his table, and we started talking a little bit. I told him I had read his autobiography, just about his life. But the book is really great if you haven't read it. But I talked to him about reading that, and he says, you know, we're really close to the burn center where I was being treated at. And I said, yeah. I said, and we started talking about that a little bit, and just really super nice guy. And when I ended up getting an 8x10 signed by him, and also had him sign my book. And I remember he pointed out CJ's autograph. He said, "Oh, look at CJ looking all fancy with his writing." And I remember that just cracked me up. But he wrote, and again, my wife wasn't there, but I asked him if he would make it out to my wife and I. He said, "To Ben and Jackie, you're next, Kane Hodder, Jason, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Later in the day, like right before I was going to leave, because Kane Hodder is notorious at the time. I don't know if he does this anymore because I think there's been some issues or people, because people are so strange now. But back in 2014, he was still choking people out if you asked him to do it. And I asked him to do it. I went back up there. I was talking to this couple and I showed them my tattoo because I have a tattoo on my leg of Kane right before he kills Melissa, and that famous pose where he's got the axe over his head. At the end of part 7, I have that tattooed on my right leg, and I was showing it to them, and they said, "Oh, you should totally show it to Kane and see if he'll choke you out." And I'm like going, so I wasn't brave enough to show him the tattoo, but I did go up and ask him if he would do it, and he did it. And I swear to God, it is probably the most scariest thing I've ever been through. He really choked me. I mean, I've never felt like the breath leave me so quickly when he wrapped his hands around my throat. I mean, it was terrifying and awesome at the same time. So what a great experience. Next one I want to talk about is Ari Lehman, of course, who played Jason in Friday the 13th, the original Friday the 13th. Now this one was another one that was kind of strange. So he was gone. Like he had this one table that was all kind of like, it was away from where Amy and CJ and Tom Fridley, who were all kind of sitting together, where he was kind of in the middle of the room a little bit, and he was at lunch for a long time. And I remember CJ started teasing him when he came back from lunch, calling him Mr. Rock and Roll and stuff like that, and they were teasing him about being gone for so long. And when he and I started talking, he just kept getting distracted by these girls, and it pissed my wife off. Kind of a weird, awkward experience. I'm glad I met him. Like, he wasn't a dick, but he was just kind of like, he just didn't seem like he was focused on me, and I was paying for him to sign my book and it's like and take a picture with him. So it was cool. Like I said, it's probably one of my lesser experiences. I had more fun talking to him than Aaron Gray for sure, but it wasn't the greatest, but still nothing against the guy. And he's the first guy to play the iconic role of Jason Voorhees. And he wrote Ben and Jackie, Welcome to Camp Crystal Lake, Ari Lehman, Jason 1. The next one, and this might be controversial, so please, if you guys, again, I didn't know, and I still don't know, this whole thing with Corey Haim and Dominic Brescia. Brescia, of course, played Joey in Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. And if I'm not mistaken, this was his first convention appearance. I don't know if he did anything other than this. I know he was on like a conservative radio show, that he was like a radio show host on conservative radio. I just remember he was sitting by himself. I don't think a lot of people recognized him because, when he played Joey, he had curly hair. And now when I met him, he was bald and older. He seemed very, timid at first when I walked up to his table. We talked to him for like 20 minutes. We were talking about, the tragic passing of Corey Haim and Corey Feldman, just because Corey Feldman had been in Final Chapter and, it was at the very beginning of A New Beginning. But we were talking about that and just talking about the film and everything, and I talked to him, and he was actually the shirt I was wearing, he's on it, and he was like, "Oh, that's my," I said, "You're on my shirt," and he goes, "Oh my God," he goes, there I am and everything. He talked a lot about Corey Haim though, a lot about him and a lot about Corey Feldman, and I know they all kind of hung out in the same circles. If you read choreography, you can kind of tell. I know Corey Feldman purposely changed some of the names in that, but you can kind of tell that some of the times it is Dominic that he's referring to. But like I said, he was nothing but kind to me and my wife, and he actually didn't charge me. He's the one person I've met that didn't charge me for the autograph. He said not to tell anybody. Two are more recent. So on the 18th of last June, I met Ken Kersinger, who played Jason in Freddy vs. Jason. It was funny because I had posted, I did a little Instagram video on my way to the con, just, because we were in traffic and I was killing time, and I posted it. And Sean Clark, one of my heroes who does Horror's Hell Ground, Things with Two Heads podcast, he represents Ken Kersinger. And he said, "Oh, tell Ken I said hi," when I posted the video. And got in line. So I got in line to meet Ken. Got the picture taken and everything, and just talked to him about how much I loved the movie, and it was like it was a long time coming for me because I had heard about the film for so long, and he was really just sweet. He said thanks so much for keeping the movie alive, and just a complete sweetheart, really big guy but really gentle soul. and we had a great experience. But when I left the table, I realized, holy shit, I didn't tell him Sean said hi. So I told my wife, I said, I got to run back and do this real quick. So I ran back to where Ken was, and I ran into my friend Danny and his fiance Bex. I said, I got to go talk to Ken real quick. And I ran back up to Ken and I said, Ken, I said, I'm so sorry. And I had a hard time talking to him for some reason. He was another one that I had a hard time talking to. And I said, Sean Clark told me to tell you hi. And he said, that's funny. I just got a text from him. And I said, oh, that's hecka funny. So it's like, it was just, we had a really good like little laugh about that. And yeah, he was a complete honest, really cool guy. And yeah, it was just a blast talking to him. But yeah, it was an honor, and I'm so glad I got to meet him. He's one of the last Jason actors I have to meet. The last one I want to showcase is, of course, Corey Feldman, who played Tommy Jarvis in Final Chapter and at the beginning of A New Beginning. And he was really cool. Again, I waited the longest I've ever waited for any autograph for him. And it was totally worth it, though. He had a couple people that were up there, like, sort of, asking people what they were having signed, if they were getting a picture, they were doing. And I remember just saying I was having this book signed. I just said, that, Final Chapter, scared the heck out of me. And he asked me if I had met Ted White. This was a week after Ted White had passed away, unfortunately. And I said, no. I said, I never had the opportunity. But Corey was really sweet, a really nice guy. It was such an honor meeting him. And yeah, it was a moment that meant a lot to me, because these films, especially Final Chapter, because he was a young kid in that and I was a young kid, so I really related to him. And it just meant so much meeting him, and he was nothing but sweet, nothing but just a complete nice person. So that is it, my fellow fiends. I hope everyone enjoyed this. It was something a little bit different. Like I said, talking about meeting some of my heroes from this amazing franchise, and just going into some specifics about each of those occurrences. And yeah, it was a blast. I'm so grateful for these memories, so grateful for this book, this amazing book that Peter Brack made. It means so much to me, more so than I could ever explain. So again, wanted to do something different. I hope people enjoyed this. I hope everyone has a very fun Friday the 13th. Put on some movies, get some popcorn, enjoy them. I always sort of flip a coin which ones I'm going to watch. I might watch parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think that'd be kind of fun, because those are the 4 steelbooks I have. Even though I'm not going to open those, I have many copies of those movies, and I could watch those. I think it'd be kind of fun to watch the first 4, which I haven't done in a while. Like I said, part 2 has really become one of my favorites, even though I always liked it. Jason didn't have the hockey mask, so when I was a kid, I didn't watch that one as much. But now it's just really grown on me, especially after meeting the amazing Steve Dash. So thanks so much again for watching. I hope everyone's doing well, and I promise there's some really good horror content coming soon. Happy Friday the 13th, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take it easy. Stay scared as always. Hey fellow Fright Fiends, just want to say thank you again for supporting Boogeyman Ben's Horror Zone. If you're brand new to the channel and you haven't yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe button down below, hit the bell notification so you're updated every time I drop a new video. I typically do this once or twice a week with new content. I've been doing this for over 11 years, and the horror genre is a passion of mine, and it really means a lot to me that I can share that passion with all of you guys. Thanks so much again for the support, and I'll talk to you again later. Take it easy, stay scared as always.